Imagine standing in a garden that you've never tended. Weeds choke the pathways. Thorns snag your clothing. The soil lies hard and unforgiving beneath your feet. This garden exists in every mind, including yours. And right now, in this very moment, you hold the tools to transform it. Most people wander through life unaware that they are gardeners of their own consciousness. They allow any seed to take root, any thought to flourish unchecked, and then wonder why their inner landscape feels chaotic, overgrown, and hostile to their dreams. But you're different. You're here because you sense a profound truth. Your thoughts are not random visitors to be passively endured. They are living organisms in a mental ecosystem that you have the power to cultivate, prune, and direct toward abundant growth. In the next 90 minutes, you will discover how to become the master gardener of your mind. You will learn to identify which mental seeds produce the fruit of success, which thoughts are weeds draining your vitality, and which cognitive habits create the rich soil where dreams take root and flourish. This is not another book about positive thinking or forced optimism. This is about understanding the science and art of mental cultivation, about creating an inner environment so nourishing that growth becomes inevitable. The garden of your mind is waiting. The question is, will you tend it with intention, or will you let chance decide what grows there? Your transformation begins now. Chapter 1. Understanding your mental ecosystem. Close your eyes for a moment and picture a thriving garden. Not just any garden, but one where every plant serves a purpose, where the soil is rich with nutrients, where sunlight reaches every corner, and where water flows freely to nourish growth. Now, open your eyes and recognize this truth. Your mind operates exactly like this garden, and understanding its ecosystem is the first step toward transforming your entire life. The concept of a mental ecosystem is not metaphorical nonsense designed to make psychology sound poetic. Research in cognitive ecology demonstrates that our minds function as complex, interconnected systems where thoughts, emotions, memories, and beliefs interact in ways that either promote or inhibit our psychological well-being. Just as a garden depends on the health of its soil, the diversity of its plants, and the balance of its ecosystem, your mind requires similar attention to thrive. Consider for a moment how a garden works. The soil does not simply exist as inert dirt. It teems with microorganisms, fungi, minerals, and decomposing matter that create the foundation for life. Similarly, your subconscious mind contains the accumulated experiences, beliefs, and patterns that form the bedrock of your conscious thoughts. A gardener who ignores soil health will struggle no matter how carefully they tend the visible plants. In the same way, lasting mental transformation requires attention to these deeper layers of your psychological terrain. In nature, gardens demonstrate the principle of interconnection. When you plant tomatoes, you might pair them with basil to repel pests and enhance growth. When you introduce ladybugs, they control aphids without harming beneficial insects. Remove one element, and the entire system adjusts. Your thoughts operate under this same principle of cognitive ecology. A single belief can cascade through your mental ecosystem, influencing emotions, triggering behaviors, and shaping your perception of reality. When you believe you are capable, this thought sends roots deep into your subconscious, influences the words you choose, affects the risks you take, and ultimately determines the outcomes you achieve. Studies in cognitive psychology have revealed that the human brain processes approximately 6,000 thoughts per day. Most people treat these thoughts as inconsequential background noise, but research in neuroplasticity shows that every repeated thought strengthens neural pathways, literally reshaping the physical structure of your brain. This means that the thoughts you entertain today are actively constructing the mental landscape you will inhabit tomorrow. The question becomes urgent. Are you planting seeds of possibility or weeds of limitation? The mental ecosystem operates on 4 foundational principles that mirror natural ecology. First, there is the principle of cultivation. Nothing grows well in neglect. Just as a garden requires regular attention, your mind demands conscious cultivation. This does not mean exhausting yourself with constant mental effort, but rather developing awareness of what you are allowing to take root. Second, there is the principle of diversity. A monoculture garden is vulnerable to disease and pests. Similarly, a mind fixated on a single type of thought, whether negative self-talk or even excessive goal focus without balance, becomes brittle and prone to breakdown. Mental health researchers have found that psychological flexibility, the ability to hold multiple perspectives and adapt thinking patterns, correlates strongly with resilience and well-being. The third principle is that of seasonality and cycles. Gardens do not produce year-round without rest. They need periods of dormancy, of winter quiet, where roots grow deeper, even as nothing appears above the surface. Your mind also requires these cycles. Periods of rest, reflection, and apparent non-productivity are not wastes of time. They are essential seasons where integration happens, where insights germinate, and where your mental soil replenishes itself for the next cycle of active growth. Finally, there is the principle of succession and evolution. Left completely alone, a garden will eventually be overtaken by whatever is most aggressive in the local environment. But with thoughtful succession planning, a gardener can guide the evolution of the space toward increasing productivity and beauty. Your mind works the same way. Without intention, old patterns will dominate. With conscious direction, you can guide your mental evolution toward ever greater capabilities. Understanding these principles transforms how you relate to your own thoughts. Many people feel victimized by their minds, as if thoughts appear randomly and must be endured. But when you recognize your role as the gardener, you step into power. You realize that while you cannot control every seed that blows into your mental garden, external events, other people's actions, unexpected challenges, you absolutely control which seeds you water, which you pull up, and which you give the prime real estate in your consciousness. The science of cognitive behavioral therapy has demonstrated conclusively that changing thought patterns changes emotional states and behavioral outcomes. Research conducted by cognitive psychologists shows that individuals who actively challenge and restructure negative thought patterns experience measurable improvements in mental health within weeks. These are not minor adjustments. Studies tracking participants over months reveal that those who consistently practice cognitive restructuring show decreased symptoms of anxiety and depression, while simultaneously reporting increased life satisfaction and sense of purpose. The mechanism is straightforward. By identifying cognitive distortions, examining the evidence for and against them, and deliberately replacing them with more accurate and helpful thoughts, you are quite literally pulling weeds and planting better crops in your mental garden. What makes this process so powerful is its cumulative nature. When you pull one weed, you make space for something better. When you plant one positive seed and tend it carefully, it grows and produces more seeds of its kind. Over time, the balance of your mental ecosystem shifts. Thoughts that once dominated your consciousness lose their grip. New patterns establish themselves. And you discover that transformation is not about forcing yourself to think differently through willpower alone. It is about understanding the natural principles of mental growth and working with them, not against them. As you move forward in this book, you will learn specific techniques for every aspect of mental gardening. Preparing the soil of your subconscious, selecting the right seeds for your goals, watering your thoughts with attention and emotion, pruning away what no longer serves you, protecting your garden from invading negativity, and harvesting the abundant fruits of a well-tended mind. But first, you must fully embrace your identity as a gardener. Not someday. Not after you fix everything that is wrong. Right now, exactly as you are, you have everything you need to begin cultivating a mental ecosystem that nourishes your growth. The garden is waiting, and you are ready. Chapter 2. The Soil of Your Subconscious. Every experienced gardener knows that success or failure is determined long before the first seed goes into the ground. The soil makes all the difference. You can have the finest seeds, the perfect weather, and the most dedicated watering schedule. But if your soil is depleted, compacted, or toxic, nothing will thrive. Your subconscious mind is the soil of your mental garden, and understanding how to prepare it is the difference between struggle and flourishing. The subconscious mind is not mysterious or mystical. It is the vast storage system of your brain, holding memories, learned behaviors, emotional patterns, and beliefs formed throughout your life. Neuroscience research estimates that 95% of your thoughts, decisions, and behaviors arise from this subconscious realm. This means that your conscious intentions, while important, are operating on a foundation that was largely constructed before you even knew what was happening. The beliefs embedded in your subconscious soil were planted by parents, teachers, early experiences, cultural messages, and the interpretations your young mind made about the world. Some of these beliefs serve you beautifully. Others are like rocks and clay, blocking the growth you desperately want. Consider how soil forms in nature. Over centuries, rock breaks down into minerals. Organic matter decomposes into nutrients. Microorganisms colonize and create structure. The result is something that can support life. Your subconscious has undergone a similar formation process. Every experience you have ever had has contributed to its composition. Positive experiences added nutrients. Traumatic experiences might have introduced toxins. Repetitive patterns created structure, for better or worse. And now, as an adult with conscious awareness, you have the opportunity to test your soil and improve it. Testing mental soil means examining your core beliefs. These are the foundational assumptions that shape how you interpret everything else. Do you believe the world is generally safe or dangerous? Do you believe people are trustworthy or suspicious? Do you believe you are capable or inadequate? Do you believe success requires sacrifice or can emerge from joy? These beliefs operate beneath your awareness most of the time, but they color every perception and decision you make. Research in cognitive science shows that people with core beliefs centered on growth, safety, and capability show dramatically different life outcomes than those with beliefs rooted in scarcity, danger, and inadequacy. The good news is that soil can and be amended. Gardeners facing poor soil do not abandon their dreams. They add compost, introduce beneficial organisms, break up compaction, and balance pH levels. You can do the same with your subconscious. This process begins with awareness. You must identify which beliefs are operating below the surface. Often, these beliefs reveal themselves through patterns. If you consistently self-sabotage, just as success appears within reach, there is likely a subconscious belief that you do not deserve success, or that success is dangerous. If you find yourself repeatedly choosing partners who treat you poorly, there is probably a belief that you are not worthy of genuine love. If you start projects with enthusiasm but never finish them, you might hold a belief that completion leads to judgment, or that starting is more valuable than completing. Once you identify a limiting belief, the next step is to examine it with the same scrutiny you would apply to any other claim. Cognitive behavioral therapy offers a framework for this examination. Ask yourself, what is the evidence for this belief? What is the evidence against it? Is there an alternative explanation? Am I confusing a feeling with a fact? Am I assuming I can predict the future? This kind of questioning disrupts the automatic acceptance that keeps limiting beliefs in place. It introduces oxygen into compacted soil, allowing new growth to become possible. But awareness and questioning alone are not enough. You must actively introduce new material into your subconscious soil. This is where the practice of deliberate thought becomes crucial. Research in neuroplasticity demonstrates that the brain literally rewires itself based on repeated experience. When you consistently think thoughts that contradict an old limiting belief, you're not just engaging in positive self-talk. You are creating new neural pathways that over time become the dominant routes for mental traffic. A study published in the journal Psychological Science found that participants who spent just 10 minutes a day over 8 weeks deliberately practicing positive thoughts showed measurable changes in brain structure, particularly in areas associated with emotional regulation and stress response. This process of amending subconscious soil also requires patience. When you add compost to depleted garden soil, you do not see immediate results. The organisms need time to break down the material, distribute nutrients, and improve structure. Similarly, changing core beliefs takes consistent effort over weeks and months. This is why many people give up too soon. They try affirmations for a few days, see no change, and conclude it does not work. But that is like planting a seed, checking the next day, seeing no plant, and declaring gardening a waste of time. The change is happening, but it is happening at the level of roots first. Another critical aspect of improving your mental soil is dealing with toxins. In a garden, toxins might be heavy metals, pesticides, or contaminated water. In your mind, toxins are traumatic memories, deeply ingrained shame, persistent negative self-talk, and unprocessed emotional pain. These elements poison the soil and prevent healthy growth. You cannot simply ignore them or pretend they do not exist. Research in trauma therapy shows that unprocessed, difficult experiences continue to influence behavior and emotional states years or even decades later, operating from the subconscious and sabotaging conscious intentions. Addressing these toxins might require professional help. Therapists trained in approaches like cognitive processing therapy, EMDR, or somatic experiencing can help you safely process and integrate difficult experiences so they no longer contaminate your mental soil. This is not weakness. This is wise gardening. If your soil were contaminated with actual toxins, you would not try to muscle through it with willpower. You would get expert help to remediate it properly. Your mind deserves the same level of care. As you work on improving the soil of your subconscious, you will notice something remarkable. Plants you have been trying to grow for years suddenly begin to flourish. Goals that felt impossible start to feel achievable. Behaviors that required enormous willpower become easier and more natural. This is because you are no longer fighting your foundation. Instead of trying to force growth in depleted soil, you have enriched the environment, and growth is now the natural outcome. One of the most powerful techniques for working with your subconscious soil is the practice of visualization combined with emotion. Your subconscious mind does not distinguish clearly between imagined and real experiences, especially when strong emotion is involved. This is why traumatic memories can feel so present even years later. But you can use this same mechanism constructively. When you vividly imagine yourself succeeding, experiencing joy, feeling confident, and overcoming challenges. Especially when you allow yourself to feel the emotions associated with these experiences, you are literally creating neural pathways and emotional associations that prepare your subconscious for these outcomes. Research in sports psychology has documented this effect extensively. Athletes who combine physical practice with detailed mental rehearsal show better performance than those who rely on physical practice alone. The state of your subconscious soil determines which thoughts can take root and flourish. When you invest time in examining your core beliefs, challenging limiting patterns, processing difficult emotions, and deliberately creating new neural pathways, you are engaging in the most foundational work of mental gardening. Everything else you do will build on this foundation. The time you spend on this work is never wasted. It is the most valuable investment you can make in your own growth, because once your soil is healthy and nutrient-rich, everything you plant will grow with far less effort and far greater abundance. Chapter 3. Selecting the right seeds. Walk into any garden center, and you will be overwhelmed by choices. Thousands of seed packets, each promising beautiful flowers or delicious vegetables. But experienced gardeners know that having every seed in the world means nothing if you do not select the right ones for your specific garden, climate, and goals. The same principle applies to your mind. You are constantly exposed to ideas, beliefs, ambitions, and thought patterns. The question is not which ones are good in some abstract sense, but which ones are right for the mental garden you want to cultivate. The first step in seed selection is clarity about what you actually want to grow. This sounds obvious, yet most people have never taken the time to articulate their vision with specificity. They say they want to be happy, successful, or fulfilled, but these are not clear gardening plans. They are vague wishes. Imagine telling a gardener you want good stuff to grow. They would need to know, do you want vegetables or flowers? Are you trying to feed your family or create beauty? Do you want annual plants that bloom spectacularly for one season, or perennials that return year after year? Are you gardening for immediate gratification or long-term establishment? Translating this to your mental garden means asking precise questions. What specific outcomes do you want in your life? What kind of person do you want to become? What experiences do you want to have? What legacy do you want to leave? What feelings do you want to experience regularly? The more specific you can be, the easier it becomes to select thoughts, beliefs, and focus areas that will actually produce those outcomes. Research in goal-setting psychology consistently shows that specific, measurable goals lead to better outcomes than vague intentions. This is because specificity provides a clear target for your subconscious to work toward. Once you have clarity about what you want to grow, you need to understand which thoughts and beliefs are the seeds that will produce those outcomes. This requires examining the connection between thought patterns and life results. If you want to grow confidence, what are the seed thoughts that produce it? Research in positive psychology points to thoughts like, I am capable of learning. My past does not define my future. I can handle challenges. And I have valuable contributions to make. These are not empty affirmations. They are cognitive frameworks that, when believed and reinforced, change behavior in ways that lead to competent action, which in turn reinforces the original thought. Contrast this with the weeds that often dominate people's mental gardens. Thoughts like, I always mess things up, people will judge me, I'm not good enough, and nothing works out for me are also seeds, but they produce a very different harvest. They lead to hesitant action, self-sabotage, avoidance of opportunity, and ultimately confirm the original negative belief. This creates a vicious cycle where the thought proves itself true through its influence on behavior. The critical insight is that you can break this cycle by deliberately planting different seeds. But here is where most people make a crucial mistake. They try to plant seeds that are completely foreign to their current mental ecosystem. Someone who has spent 30 years thinking, I am unworthy, cannot simply declare I am supremely confident and deserving, and expect their subconscious to accept it. The gap is too large. It is like trying to grow tropical orchids in a desert without any preparation. The environment will reject the plant. Instead, you need to use what gardeners call succession planting. You start with seeds that can survive in your current conditions, even if they are not your ultimate goal. These bridge thoughts create an environment where eventually your desired thoughts can take root. For example, if someone struggles with low self-worth, a bridge thought might be, I am learning to see my value, or I have worth even if I do not always feel it. These thoughts do not require them to suddenly believe something that contradicts years of experience. They introduce the possibility of change while acknowledging current reality. Over time, as these bridge thoughts become established, they change the mental environment enough that stronger thoughts like, I am worthy of respect and success, can take hold. Studies in cognitive behavioral therapy show that this graduated approach leads to more lasting change than attempting sudden, dramatic belief shifts. Seed selection also requires understanding the concept of opportunity cost. Every minute you spend thinking certain thoughts is a minute you are not available for other thoughts. Every bit of mental energy invested in worry is energy not available for creative problem solving. Every moment spent ruminating on past mistakes is a moment not spent imagining future possibilities. Gardeners understand this intuitively when they talk about spacing and crop selection. You cannot plant everything, so you must choose what matters most. Research on attention and focus reveals that the human mind has limited bandwidth. When that bandwidth is consumed by thoughts that do not serve your growth, there is literally no capacity left for thoughts that would. This is why one of the most important practices in thought gardening is the regular audit of your mental space. What thoughts are you allowing to occupy your consciousness? Are they producing the outcomes you want? Are they consistent with the person you are becoming? If not, it is time to pull those seeds out and plant new ones. This is not about toxic positivity or denying negative emotions. It is about being intentional with your finite mental resources. You can acknowledge that something is difficult without allowing the thought, this is impossible, to dominate your mental garden. You can feel disappointed without planting, I always fail, as your core belief. The quality of seeds also matters enormously. In gardening, seeds from healthy, well-adapted parent plants produce vigorous offspring. Seeds from weak or diseased plants rarely thrive. Your thoughts work the same way. Thoughts that are grounded in reality, supported by evidence, and aligned with your values will grow into strong, healthy mental patterns. Thoughts based on distortion, catastrophizing, or comparison will produce weak, unhealthy patterns that drain your energy. The practice of cognitive restructuring, taught in therapy, helps you identify these distorted thoughts and replace them with higher quality seed thoughts based on accuracy and balance. Furthermore, consider the concept of heirloom versus hybrid seeds. Heirloom seeds are those that have been passed down through generations, proven over time. Hybrid seeds are created by crossing varieties to emphasize specific traits. In your mind, some thoughts are heirlooms, passed down through cultural wisdom, tested across generations. These might include ideas like, consistent effort produces results, or kindness creates connection. Other thoughts are hybrids you create specifically for your unique situation, combining insights from different sources to produce exactly what you need. Both types have value, but you should consciously decide which you are planting rather than accepting everything randomly. Another dimension of seed selection involves timing. Gardeners plant different crops at different times of year based on climate and growth rates. Some seeds need to be started indoors early. Others go directly in the ground once danger of frost passes. Some crops are planted in succession for continuous harvest. Your thoughts can be approached with similar strategic timing. When you are in a stable, resourceful state, that is the time to plant challenging new beliefs and ambitious goal thoughts. When you are depleted or dealing with crisis, that might be the time to plant thoughts focused on resilience, self-compassion, and taking things one day at a time. Matching the right thoughts to your current capacity prevents the burnout that comes from trying to force growth at the wrong time. One final critical element of seed selection is diversity within coherence. A healthy garden has variety, but not chaos. Different plants serve different purposes while still creating a harmonious whole. Similarly, your mental garden benefits from having different types of thoughts serving different functions. You need growth-oriented thoughts to drive ambition. You need acceptance thoughts to maintain peace. You need compassion thoughts to guide relationships. You need curiosity thoughts to fuel learning. The key is that all these different thought types should align with your core values and overall vision. They should complement rather than contradict each other. Research in self-concordant goals shows that people who pursue objectives aligned with their authentic values experience greater well-being and persistence than those chasing goals imposed by others or driven by external validation. As you become more skilled at seed selection, you will develop discernment. You will start to notice when someone else's idea is interesting but not right for your garden. You will recognize when societal expectations are trying to plant seeds that would not thrive in your specific conditions. You will trust your judgment about which opportunities to pursue and which to politely decline. This is not selfishness. This is stewardship. You are the guardian of your mental ecosystem, and part of that role is protecting it from invasive species that would choke out the plants you have carefully cultivated. The thoughts you plant today are creating your future reality. Choose them with intention. Choose them with wisdom. Choose them with an eye toward the harvest you want to bring in. Every thought is a seed. Make sure you are planting the ones that will grow into the life you truly want to live. Chapter 4. Watering with attention and emotion. You have prepared your soil. You have selected your seeds carefully. You have planted them with intention. Now comes the daily work that determines whether those seeds flourish or wither. Watering. In your mental garden, water is attention and emotion. These are the forces that bring your thoughts to life, giving them the energy to grow, develop, and produce results in your real-world experience. Understanding how to direct your attention and emotional energy is one of the most powerful skills you can develop. Attention is a limited resource, and where you place it determines what grows in your consciousness. This is not metaphorical. Neuroscience research shows that neurons that fire together wire together. When you pay attention to a thought, you are literally strengthening the neural pathways associated with it. Repeat this process over days and weeks, and that thought becomes a deeply ingrained pattern, easily activated and difficult to dislodge. This means that every moment of attention you give to a thought is like pouring water on that seed. It grows stronger, sends down deeper roots, and becomes more likely to influence your behavior and emotional state. The problem is that most people water their weeds more than their desired plants. They give enormous attention to worries, past failures, perceived inadequacies, and worst-case scenarios. These thoughts receive hours of focused attention daily, growing massive and dominating the mental landscape. Meanwhile, thoughts about possibility, capability, gratitude, and vision receive only brief, scattered moments of attention. It is like spending all day watering thorns and then wondering why you have no flowers. The principle of attention as water means you must become ruthlessly intentional about where you direct your focus. This is not about denying problems or pretending challenges do not exist. It is about choosing which problems receive your sustained attention and which you acknowledge briefly before returning focus to more productive thoughts. Research in attention training, particularly through mindfulness meditation, demonstrates that the ability to control attention is a skill that can be developed. Studies show that even short periods of daily meditation practice, as brief as 10 minutes, can measurably improve attention regulation over weeks. Participants in these studies report being better able to notice when their mind wanders redirect it to their chosen focus, and maintain concentration even in distracting environments. This is exactly the skill required for effective mental gardening. You need to notice when your attention has wandered to weeds and redirect it to the plants you want to grow. The second element of watering is emotion. If attention determines which thoughts get energy, emotion determines how much energy they receive. A thought accompanied by strong emotion is like a plant receiving a deluge of water. It grows rapidly, spreading throughout your mental ecosystem. This is why a single intensely emotional experience can create memories and beliefs that last a lifetime, while thousands of neutral experiences fade quickly. Traumatic events demonstrate this principle clearly. One moment of intense fear or pain can create thought patterns and behavioral responses that persist for decades, requiring significant therapeutic work to resolve. But you can use this same mechanism constructively. When you think about your goals and allow yourself to feel genuine excitement, enthusiasm, and joy, you are giving those thoughts emotional water that helps them grow rapidly and powerfully. Visualization practices work not because of magic, but because of this principle. When you vividly imagine achieving something you want while actually feeling the emotions you would experience in that moment, you're creating neural patterns and emotional associations that your brain treats as real. Sports psychologists have documented this extensively. Athletes who mentally rehearse their performance while feeling the emotions of success show improvement in actual performance, sometimes comparable to physical practice. The challenge is that many people have learned to disconnect from their emotions or only allow themselves to feel negative ones intensely. They might think positive thoughts, but do so mechanically, without any emotional resonance. This is like pouring water next to your plants instead of on them. The thought exists, but it does not receive the emotional fuel needed for real growth. Learning to reconnect with positive emotions requires practice and permission. You must give yourself permission to feel excitement, even if things have disappointed you before. You must allow yourself to feel pride in small accomplishments, even if you have bigger goals remaining. You must let yourself experience hope, even if uncertainty remains. An important distinction here is the difference between authentic emotion and forced emotion. Your subconscious can tell the difference. If you are trying to manufacture feelings you do not actually experience, you are creating internal conflict rather than nourishment. This is why generic affirmations often fail. Someone might repeat, "I am wealthy and successful," while feeling desperately broke and inadequate. The words have no emotional water behind them, and worse, they create dissonance between the statement and the actual emotional state. This dissonance actually reinforces the negative feeling because the subconscious interprets the failed affirmation as evidence of its truth. Instead, work with the emotions you actually have access to. If you cannot genuinely feel wealthy right now, can you feel hopeful about improving your finances? Can you feel curious about learning new money skills? Can you feel grateful for what you currently have, even if it is less than you want? These authentic, positive emotions, even if they are not the ultimate emotion you are aiming for, provide real water for growth. Over time, as circumstances improve and your mental garden flourishes, you will naturally have access to stronger positive emotions that then accelerate your growth further. The practice of emotional regulation is crucial here. This does not mean suppressing emotions, but rather developing the ability to experience them without being overwhelmed and to shift between emotional states when appropriate. Research shows that people with strong emotional regulation skills report higher well-being, better relationships, and greater resilience in the face of challenges. They can acknowledge disappointment without drowning in it. They can feel anger without acting destructively. They can experience fear without being paralyzed. This flexibility allows them to water their desired thoughts with the right emotions while not overwatering the weeds. Mindfulness practices are particularly powerful for developing this emotional regulation capacity. When you practice observing your emotions without immediately reacting to them, you create a space between feeling and action. In that space, choice becomes possible. You can notice anxiety arising and choose whether to feed it with attention and catastrophic thinking, or acknowledge it and redirect your focus to problem-solving and grounding thoughts. Studies in mindfulness-based stress reduction show that participants develop better ability to manage difficult emotions and report decreased symptoms of anxiety and depression after consistent practice. Another aspect of watering is understanding the rhythm of attention and emotion. Just as plants need consistent watering but can be overwatered, your thoughts need regular attention but can benefit from periods of rest. Constant focus on a goal can lead to obsession and anxiety. Regular but spaced attention, combined with periods where you trust the process and focus elsewhere, often produces better results. This is similar to the principle of spaced repetition in learning. Material reviewed at intervals is retained better than material studied in one massive session. Your goals and positive thoughts benefit from regular revisiting with emotional engagement, followed by periods where you take action and let the subconscious integrate. The practice of gratitude is one of the most effective ways to water your mental garden with positive attention and emotion. Research consistently shows that people who regularly practice gratitude report higher levels of happiness, better relationships, improved health, and greater resilience. Why? Because gratitude directs attention to what is working, what is present, what is valuable. It creates positive emotional states that provide powerful water for thoughts of abundance, possibility, and contentment. When you end each day by identifying 3 things you are genuinely grateful for and allowing yourself to feel that gratitude, you are systematically watering thoughts that will grow into a more positive overall outlook. Similarly, celebration of progress, no matter how small, provides concentrated emotional water to your growth-oriented thoughts. Many people withhold positive emotions until they reach some distant milestone, but this starves their developing goals of the emotional energy needed to sustain momentum. Studies in behavioral psychology show that immediate reinforcement is far more effective for establishing new behaviors than delayed reward. When you acknowledge and emotionally celebrate each small step forward, you're reinforcing the neural patterns associated with progress, making continued forward movement more likely. As you develop your watering practice, you will become more aware of your attention and emotional patterns. You will notice how much time you spend in worry versus planning. You will see when you are giving emotional energy to resentment versus forgiveness. You will recognize when your attention has become scattered versus focused. This awareness itself is powerful because it allows you to make different choices. You cannot change patterns you are not aware of, but once you see them clearly, you can begin to redirect your attention and emotion toward thoughts that serve your growth. The daily practice of deliberate watering might look like this. Each morning, before the day's demands arise, spend a few minutes directing your attention and positive emotion toward your most important goals and values. Visualize success. Feel the emotions of achievement. Then release the attachment to immediate results and focus on the day's actions. Throughout the day, notice where your attention goes. When you catch it on negative patterns, acknowledge this without judgment and gently redirect it. In the evening, water your garden again with gratitude and celebration of progress. This simple routine, practiced consistently, will transform your mental ecosystem more than any single dramatic gesture. Your attention and emotion are precious resources. Use them wisely. Water the plants you want to grow, and watch as your mental garden flourishes. Chapter 5. Pruning away what no longer serves. Every gardener learns a lesson that seems counterintuitive at first. Sometimes taking away is more important than adding. A plant left unpruned becomes overgrown, tangled, and unproductive. Energy that should go into fruit production gets wasted on excessive leafy growth. Light cannot reach the interior branches. Air circulation decreases, inviting disease. The solution is not more water or fertilizer. The solution is the ruthless removal of what no longer serves the plant's highest good. Your mind requires the same kind of pruning. Thoughts, beliefs, relationships, habits, and commitments that once served you may now be draining your vital energy and preventing new growth. Learning to prune effectively is essential to maintaining a thriving mental ecosystem. Pruning begins with honest assessment. You must look at your current mental garden and identify what is overgrown. This requires some courage because often, the things that need pruning are thoughts and patterns we have held for years, sometimes our whole lives. They have become familiar, even if they are harmful. We might even identify with them, thinking, "This is just who I am." But the truth is that a thought pattern is permanent unless you allow it to be. The brain's neuroplasticity means you can change any pattern with sufficient intention and repetition. The question is not whether you can prune limiting thoughts, but whether you will. Some common candidates for pruning include negative self-talk that no longer protects you, beliefs about your limitations that were installed by others' opinions rather than your actual experience, resentments that are poisoning your present by keeping you anchored in past pain, and stories you tell yourself about why you cannot do something that are no longer accurate if they ever were. These thoughts are taking up valuable space in your mental garden. Every moment you spend entertaining them is a moment you could be cultivating something better. Research in rumination shows that repetitive negative thinking, particularly about past events you cannot change, is strongly correlated with depression and anxiety, while showing no correlation with productive problem solving. This means these thoughts are not even serving the protective function we often assign to them. They are simply weeds. The technique of cognitive restructuring taught in cognitive behavioral therapy provides a framework for identifying thoughts that need pruning. The process involves several steps. First, become aware of the thought. Many limiting beliefs operate automatically, below conscious awareness. You must bring them into the light. Next, examine the evidence. Ask yourself, is this thought based on facts or assumptions? Am I confusing a feeling with reality? What evidence supports this thought? What evidence contradicts it? Then consider alternative interpretations. If you are thinking, "I always fail," can you reframe this as, "I have had some failures and I have also had successes, and failures are part of learning"? Finally, replace the thought with a more balanced, accurate version. This is not positive thinking. This is accurate thinking that serves your growth. One of the most important things to prune is the belief that your worth is conditional. Many people carry the deeply rooted thought that they must earn their value through achievement, approval, or perfection. This belief drives them to overwork, people please, and sacrifice their well-being in pursuit of an impossible standard. Research in self-compassion shows that people who extend the same kindness to themselves that they would to a good friend experience lower levels of anxiety and depression and higher levels of life satisfaction than those who practice harsh self-criticism. The belief that you must earn your worth is a thought that needs pruning. You have inherent value simply by being human. Achievement adds to your life, but does not create your fundamental worth. Another category of thoughts that often needs pruning is comparison. In the age of social media, people are exposed to carefully curated highlight reels of others' lives constantly. The thought, "Everyone else has it figured out," or "I am behind where I should be," can dominate mental space. But these thoughts are based on incomplete information and serve no productive purpose. Studies show that people who frequently engage in social comparison report lower self-esteem and higher levels of envy and depression than those who focus on their own progress and values. Pruning comparison thoughts does not mean you cannot learn from others or be inspired. It means you stop using others' lives as the measuring stick for your own worth and progress. Past-focused thoughts also frequently need pruning. While learning from the past is valuable, ruminating on it is not. If you find yourself replaying conversations, decisions, or events that cannot be changed, asking what if or if only repeatedly, you are wasting energy that could be applied to creating a better present and future. Cognitive psychologists distinguish between productive reflection, which involves extracting lessons and then moving forward, and rumination, which involves repetitive negative thoughts about the past with no movement toward resolution. The first is helpful. The second needs to be pruned. When you catch yourself ruminating, consciously redirect your attention to the present moment or to future-focused problem solving. Worry is another prime candidate for pruning. The thought, what if something goes wrong, can easily take over your mental garden if left unchecked. Research distinguishes between productive worry, which leads to problem solving and preparation, and unproductive worry, which simply generates anxiety without leading to action. If you can do something about what you are worried about, do it. That is productive. If you cannot do anything about it, or you are worrying about unlikely future scenarios, that worry needs pruning. Replace it with thoughts like, I will handle challenges as they arise, or worrying does not prevent problems, it only steals my peace. The process of pruning also applies to your attention, to external input. Information is not inherently valuable. Too much information creates mental clutter and overwhelm. You must prune your information diet, cutting away news, social media, and content that agitates you without informing you, or entertainment that leaves you drained rather than restored. This does not mean ignorance. It means being selective. Ask yourself, does consuming this information help me make better decisions, feel more connected, or serve my growth? If not, prune it from your attention. Studies show that people who limit their news consumption and social media report higher well-being than those who engage constantly. Pruning relationships is perhaps the most difficult form of mental gardening, but sometimes necessary. Not every relationship that once served you still does. Some people consistently drain your energy, encourage your worst patterns, or actively undermine your growth. These relationships are like vines that choke the plants you are trying to cultivate. Setting boundaries, or in some cases distancing yourself from relationships that harm more than they help, is an act of self-preservation, not selfishness. Research on social support consistently shows that quality matters more than quantity. A few genuinely supportive relationships contribute more to well-being than many superficial or toxic ones. The practice of pruning requires ongoing attention. This is not a one-time event, but a regular maintenance activity. Just as a garden needs pruning throughout the growing season, your mind needs consistent attention to remove thoughts that are no longer serving you. This is where daily practices become crucial. A few minutes each day spent journaling about your thought patterns, questioning limiting beliefs, and consciously redirecting your mental focus will keep your garden tidy and productive. Without this regular attention, the weeds will always outcompete the flowers. One of the signs that pruning is needed is when you feel overwhelmed, scattered, or stuck. These feelings often indicate that your mental energy is being consumed by too many competing demands, outdated beliefs, or unproductive thought patterns. When you prune away what is not essential, you create space, clarity, and energy for what matters most. Studies in decision-making show that people who eliminate unnecessary options and commitments make better decisions and report higher satisfaction than those who try to keep all options open. There is often resistance to pruning because removing things can feel like loss, even when those things are harming us. We become attached to our suffering, our limiting beliefs, our grudges. They have been with us so long they feel like part of our identity. But consider this: the purpose of pruning is not to create emptiness, but to create space for better growth. When you remove a belief that limits you, you create space for a belief that empowers you. When you release a resentment, you free energy for love. When you let go of an identity that no longer fits, you make room to become who you are meant to be. The temporary discomfort of releasing what is familiar is far outweighed by the freedom and growth that follows. As you develop your pruning practice, you will become more discerning. You will quickly recognize thoughts that are draining you and redirect before they take root deeply. You will notice when old patterns are trying to reassert themselves and deal with them immediately rather than waiting until they have spread throughout your garden. You will become comfortable with saying no to inputs, thoughts, and commitments that do not align with your values and goals. This is not rigidity. This is skillful stewardship of your limited time and mental energy. The gardener who prunes skillfully creates space for abundance. The same is true for your mind. Every limiting thought you remove, every unproductive pattern you cut away, every toxic input you eliminate creates space for something better to grow. Do not be afraid to prune. Your mental garden will thank you with increased clarity, energy, and the room to flourish beyond what you currently imagine possible. Chapter 6. Protecting your garden from invaders. You have done the work. You have prepared rich soil, selected powerful seeds, watered them with attention and emotion, and pruned away what no longer serves. Your mental garden is flourishing. New thoughts are taking root. Positive patterns are establishing themselves. You feel momentum building. Then life happens. Someone criticizes you sharply. A setback occurs. Financial stress appears. Self-doubt creeps in. Suddenly, all that careful cultivation feels threatened. This is when you discover the importance of protection. A thriving garden without defenses is vulnerable to pests, diseases, and weather that can destroy months of work in days. Your mental ecosystem requires the same level of protection. The first category of invaders to guard against is external negativity. You live in a world where other people's opinions, media messages, and societal expectations constantly vie for space in your consciousness. Some of this input is genuinely helpful. Much of it is not. Criticism, especially when delivered harshly or repeatedly, can plant seeds of doubt that quickly take root if you allow them. Studies in social psychology show that negative feedback has a stronger and longer-lasting impact than positive feedback. This negativity bias was evolutionarily adaptive when threats were physical, but in the modern world, it means that one critical comment can overshadow 10 compliments. Understanding this bias helps you actively work against it. Protection begins with developing what psychologists call a secure sense of self. This is an internal knowing of your worth and capability that does not fluctuate dramatically based on external feedback. People with a secure sense of self can receive criticism without being devastated by it. They can consider whether the feedback has merit, without assuming it defines their entire value. They can disagree with others without needing to prove those others wrong. Research shows that people with higher self-compassion demonstrate this security more than those who rely on self-esteem, which tends to be more fragile and contingent on external validation. Building self-compassion through practices. Like speaking to yourself as you would to a good friend in difficulty. Recognizing that failure and imperfection are part of being human and mindfully acknowledging your struggles without being overwhelmed by them creates a protective barrier around your mental garden. Another form of protection is establishing clear boundaries. Boundaries are not walls. They are thoughtful limits that protect your well-being while still allowing connection. You must decide what you will and will not accept in your mental space. This might mean limiting contact with chronically negative people, politely declining to engage in gossip, turning off notifications on your phone, or choosing not to discuss certain topics with certain people. Studies on stress and well-being consistently show that people who establish and maintain healthy boundaries report lower stress levels and higher life satisfaction than those who try to accommodate everyone's expectations at the expense of their own needs. The news and social media are particularly potent sources of invasive thoughts. These platforms are designed to capture attention through emotional arousal, often negative. Fear, outrage, and anxiety are powerful emotions that keep people engaged, so media companies deliberately amplify content that triggers these responses. Research shows that excessive news consumption is associated with increased anxiety and decreased well-being. This does not mean you should be uninformed, but it does mean you should be strategic. Decide how much news consumption serves your ability to be an informed citizen and engaged person, and limit your exposure beyond that point. When you do consume news or social media, do so consciously rather than scrolling mindlessly. Ask yourself, is this information helping me make better decisions? Is it prompting productive action? Or is it simply agitating me without empowering me? Internal invaders are often more insidious than external ones because they disguise themselves as your own thoughts. Cognitive distortions are thought patterns that automatically arise in response to certain triggers, but are not based on accurate assessment of reality. Common distortions include all-or-nothing thinking, where everything is seen as either perfect or worthless; catastrophizing, where worst-case scenarios dominate thinking; mind reading, where you assume you know what others think without evidence; and emotional reasoning, where feelings are treated as facts. Research in cognitive behavioral therapy shows that people who learn to identify and challenge these distortions experience reduced anxiety and depression. The key is recognizing that just because a thought arises automatically does not make it true. You can question it. Comparison is an internal invader that masquerades as motivation, but usually functions as poison. When you compare your beginning to someone else's middle, or your behind-the-scenes struggles to their public success, you create suffering without benefit. Studies show that upward social comparison, comparing yourself to people you perceive as better off, typically leads to decreased self-esteem and increased negative emotion. Downward comparison, comparing yourself to people you perceive as worse off, might temporarily boost your ego, but does not actually improve your situation. The healthiest approach is to focus on your own progress over time. Compare yourself today to yourself a month ago, a year ago. That is the only comparison that matters. Perfectionism is another internal invader. While high standards can drive excellence, perfectionism driven by fear of judgment or shame is toxic. It prevents you from starting projects because they might not be good enough. It robs you of satisfaction in achievements because they are never quite enough. It creates chronic stress and undermines enjoyment. Research distinguishes between adaptive perfectionism, which involves striving for excellence while accepting that perfection is impossible, and maladaptive perfectionism, which involves harsh self-criticism and fear of failure. The first can be motivating. The second needs to be recognized as an invader and actively challenged. When you notice perfectionistic thoughts, remind yourself that done is better than perfect, that excellence is a process, not a destination, and that your worth is not determined by flawless performance. Stress and overwhelm are environmental invaders that compromise your entire mental ecosystem. When you are chronically stressed, your cognitive resources are depleted, making it harder to maintain positive thought patterns. Your body produces cortisol, which over time can impair memory and emotional regulation. Your attention narrows, focusing on threats and problems while missing opportunities and solutions. Protecting your mental garden requires managing stress proactively. This means adequate sleep, regular physical activity, healthy nutrition, and practices that activate the relaxation response like deep breathing, meditation, or time in nature. Research consistently shows that these basic self-care practices are not luxuries, but necessities for mental health. When your physical state is compromised, even the strongest positive thoughts struggle to take root. One powerful protective strategy is the practice of positive rumination, also called savoring. While negative rumination is harmful, deliberately recalling and relishing positive experiences strengthens the neural pathways associated with positive emotion. When something good happens, do not just experience it and move on. Pause. Notice it fully. Describe it to yourself or to others. Recall it later. Studies show that people who regularly practice savoring report higher levels of happiness and life satisfaction. This practice protects your mental garden by ensuring that positive experiences create lasting neural changes rather than being dismissed as fleeting moments. The company you keep significantly impacts the health of your mental garden. Research on social contagion shows that emotions, behaviors, and even health outcomes spread through social networks. If you spend time with chronically negative people, their negativity will influence your thought patterns. If you surround yourself with people who are growing, learning, and positive, their influence will support your growth. This does not mean abandoning people going through difficult times. It means being strategic about who has regular access to your mental space. Choose friends who challenge you to grow while also offering support. Limit time with people who consistently drain your energy without contributing positively. This is not cruel. This is protecting the garden you have worked so hard to cultivate. Another form of protection is developing mental flexibility. Rigid thinking makes your garden vulnerable because when circumstances change, rigid beliefs break rather than bend. Studies show that psychological flexibility, the ability to adapt your thinking and behavior to changing contexts while staying true to your values, is a strong predictor of mental health and resilience. This means holding your beliefs lightly enough to update them when you learn new information, being willing to try different approaches when one is not working, and accepting that uncertainty is part of life rather than demanding absolute certainty before taking action. The practice of regular mental check-ins provides early warning of invaders. Just as gardeners regularly inspect their plants for signs of pests or disease, you should regularly assess your thought patterns. Are you noticing more negative self-talk than usual? Are old limiting beliefs trying to reassert themselves? Are you feeling drained after certain activities or interactions? These are signs that your protective practices need strengthening. Catching invaders early, before they establish deep roots, makes them much easier to remove. Finally, remember that protection is not about creating a hermetically sealed mental environment. You cannot avoid all negative experiences or challenging emotions. Nor should you try. Difficulties and setbacks are part of life and can even strengthen you if properly processed. Protection is about maintaining the conditions that allow your carefully cultivated thoughts to thrive despite challenges. It is about ensuring that temporary setbacks do not become permanent installations in your mental landscape. It is about guarding your attention, your emotional energy, and your beliefs from influences that would drain them without contributing to your growth. Your mental garden is worth protecting. You have invested time, energy, and intention in creating an ecosystem that nourishes your growth. Do not leave it undefended. Establish boundaries. Challenge distortions. Limit toxic inputs. Surround yourself with positive influences and remain vigilant. The work of protection is ongoing, but it ensures that all your other efforts bear fruit. Chapter 7. Harvesting the Fruits of Your Mental Garden. Everything you have learned and practiced in thought gardening leads to this moment, the harvest. All the soil preparation, seed selection, watering, pruning, and protection were working toward a purpose. You did not cultivate your mental garden merely to have pretty thoughts. You did it to produce real results in your life. Better relationships, greater career success, improved health, deeper fulfillment, sustainable happiness. These are the fruits of a well-tended mind. And now it is time to learn how to recognize when fruit is ripe, how to gather it effectively, and how to ensure your garden continues producing abundance season after season. The first insight about harvesting is that results do not always appear in the form or timing you expect. When you plant tomatoes, you expect tomatoes, not apples. But with mental gardening, the fruits of your thought work may manifest in unexpected ways. You might plant thoughts of financial abundance and find that your harvest comes through an unexpected opportunity rather than your planned path. You might cultivate thoughts of health and discover that your body responds in ways you did not anticipate. Research on serendipity and opportunity recognition shows that people with positive, open mindsets are more likely to notice and act on fortunate possibilities than those with negative, closed mindsets. This means your mental garden is not just producing internal change, it is actually influencing your ability to recognize and engage with opportunities in your environment. Recognizing ripe fruit requires awareness. Many people achieve significant progress, but do not pause to acknowledge it because they are already focused on the next goal. This is a mistake that undermines motivation and prevents the positive reinforcement that fuels continued growth. Studies in behavioral psychology show that immediate recognition of progress is one of the strongest motivators for sustained effort. When you achieve something, even small, pause. Notice it. Feel satisfaction. Allow the positive emotion to reinforce the thought patterns and behaviors that led to this outcome. This is not complacency. This is intelligent gardening. You are using the harvest to strengthen the plants that produced it. One of the most important fruits to harvest is insight. As you cultivate your mental garden, you develop understanding about yourself, others, and life that you did not have before. These insights are precious because they guide your future. Cultivation. When you notice a pattern that leads to success, harvest that insight by writing it down, sharing it, or deliberately reinforcing it. When you discover a limiting belief you were not aware of before, that awareness itself is a harvest that allows you to make different choices going forward. Research on metacognition shows that people who regularly reflect on their own thinking patterns show better learning outcomes and personal growth than those who simply move from experience to experience without reflection. Emotional fruits are also significant. If you have been cultivating thoughts of gratitude, hope, confidence, and compassion, you should notice changes in your emotional baseline. You might find yourself feeling more at peace, more energized, less reactive. These are not minor achievements. Your emotional state influences every aspect of your life, from your immune function to your relationship quality to your decision-making capability. Studies in positive psychology show that people with predominantly positive emotional states live longer, have better health outcomes, and achieve more in their careers than those with predominantly negative emotions, even when controlling for other factors. When you notice improved emotional patterns, acknowledge this as a significant harvest. Behavioral fruits are perhaps the most tangible. The ultimate test of your mental garden is whether it produces different actions. Are you taking risks you would have avoided before? Are you speaking up when you previously stayed quiet? Are you maintaining boundaries where you used to overextend? Are you pursuing opportunities you would have dismissed? These behavioral changes are the fruit of your thought work. Research consistently shows that lasting behavior change requires underlying belief change. When you change your thoughts at a deep level, behavior follows naturally. When you only try to change behavior without addressing thoughts, you create internal conflict and eventual backsliding. The fact that your behaviors are changing indicates your mental garden is producing real fruit. Relational fruits manifest in how you interact with others. Thoughts of compassion, understanding, and authentic connection lead to relationships characterized by trust, support, and genuine intimacy. Thoughts of defensiveness, judgment, and self-protection lead to relationships marked by conflict, distance, and dissatisfaction. Research in relationship psychology shows that people's internal working models, their beliefs about relationships, and their worth within them directly predict relationship quality and longevity. When you notice your relationships improving, recognize this as harvest from your mental cultivation. Better relationships are not random. They result from the thoughts and beliefs you hold about yourself and others. One critical aspect of harvesting is timing. Fruit picked too early is unripe and unsatisfying. Fruit left too long becomes overripe and rotten. With mental gardening, this means recognizing when to act on your thoughts and when to let them develop further. You might have a business idea that excites you, but rushing to implement before you have adequate preparation leads to failure. Conversely, waiting for perfect conditions before acting means you never harvest anything because perfect conditions do not exist. Developing judgment about right timing comes with experience. Pay attention to whether action feels energizing or depleting. Energizing readiness suggests fruit is ripe. Anxious forcing suggests it is not. The concept of first fruits is important in agriculture. The first harvest from a new plant or field is often celebrated because it represents the success of all the work that went into establishing the garden. In your mental cultivation, first fruits are the initial results that show your thought work is producing real change. Maybe the first time you speak confidently in a meeting. Maybe the first time you set a boundary without guilt. Maybe the first time you respond to criticism without defensiveness. These moments deserve celebration because they confirm that your mental ecosystem is healthy and productive. Studies show that celebrating early wins creates momentum and motivation for continued effort. Continuous harvest is the goal. A well-designed garden does not produce all its fruit at once and then go dormant for the year. Thoughtful planning creates succession planting so that something is always ripening. Your mental garden should work the same way. While you are harvesting the fruits of one set of thoughts, you should be cultivating others that will produce future results. This creates a continuous flow of positive outcomes rather than boom and bust cycles. Research on goal setting shows that people who maintain multiple goals at different stages of completion report higher well-being and sustained motivation than those who focus on one goal at a time. Sharing your harvest multiplies it. When you teach others what you have learned, share your insights, or model the behavior that comes from your mental cultivation, you reinforce your own learning while helping others. Studies in education show that teaching is one of the most effective ways to solidify learning. When you explain your mental gardening practices to someone else, you deepen your own understanding. Additionally, sharing creates social connection and contribution, which research consistently identifies as key components of well-being and meaning. The practice of gratitude is essential to proper harvesting. Every fruit your mental garden produces deserves acknowledgement and appreciation. This is not just about feeling good. It is about reinforcing the neural pathways that created the result. When you achieve something and genuinely feel grateful for it, you are strengthening the thought patterns that led to that achievement, making similar outcomes more likely in the future. Research shows that gratitude practices are among the most effective interventions for increasing happiness and life satisfaction. This is partly because gratitude directs attention to positive outcomes, training the brain to notice more of what is going well. Some fruits take longer to ripen than others. This is important to understand because modern culture conditions us to expect immediate results. But some of the most valuable fruits of mental gardening take months or years to fully develop. The fruit of deep confidence that can weather any criticism, the fruit of authentic relationships built on years of honest communication, the fruit of financial stability created through consistent wise choices. These cannot be rushed. They require patient cultivation. Research on long-term goal achievement shows that people who maintain consistent effort over years, even when progress seems slow, ultimately achieve far more than those who work intensely for short periods and then quit. Finally, the ultimate harvest is not any external achievement, but rather the person you become through the process of cultivation. When you commit to tending your mental garden consistently, you transform at a fundamental level. You become more aware, more intentional, more resilient, more compassionate. You develop character strengths that serve you in every area of life. Studies in positive psychology show that character development, the cultivation of strengths like courage, wisdom, humanity, and transcendence, predicts long-term well-being more reliably than external success markers like wealth or status. The person you are becoming is the most valuable fruit of your mental garden. The harvest is not the end. It is part of an ongoing cycle. As you gather fruit, you also gather seeds for future planting. Each success teaches you what works, giving you knowledge to cultivate even more effectively next season. Each challenge overcome reveals limiting beliefs you did not know you held, allowing you to prepare better soil. Each insight gained becomes part of your mental ecosystem, influencing all future growth. This is the beauty of thought gardening. It is not a one-time effort, but a way of life that produces increasing abundance over time. Harvest with joy, harvest with gratitude, harvest with the knowledge that this is the natural result of your faithful cultivation, and then return to the garden. Because there is always more to tend, more to grow, more abundance waiting to emerge from the rich soil of your transformed mind. Chapter 8. Sustaining your mental garden through all seasons. You have learned the principles. You have implemented the practices. Your mental garden is flourishing. The critical question now is, how do you sustain this growth, not just for weeks or months, but for years and decades? How do you ensure that your mental cultivation becomes a lifelong practice, rather than a temporary burst of enthusiasm? This is where understanding seasons becomes essential. Every garden has natural cycles: growth and dormancy, activity and rest, abundance and scarcity. Your mental ecosystem follows these same rhythms. Learning to work with these cycles, rather than against them, is the key to sustainable transformation. The first season to understand is spring, the season of new beginnings and rapid growth. In nature, spring is when seeds sprout, plants burst into growth, and gardens demand constant attention. Mentally, you experience spring seasons when you are starting new projects, implementing new habits, or making major life changes. These periods are exciting, but also demanding. You need high energy, consistent effort, and close attention to detail. Research shows that the first few weeks of habit formation are critical. This is when new neural pathways are being established, when old patterns resist most strongly, and when your motivation will be tested. During these spring seasons, protect your emerging growth carefully. Maintain your practices even when they feel difficult. Give yourself grace when you stumble, and remember that this intensity is temporary. Once new patterns establish, they require less conscious effort. The second season is summer, characterized by steady growth and maintenance. Your new thought patterns have taken root. Your positive habits are becoming more automatic. You're seeing results from your cultivation. Summer is when you can ease off the intense focus of spring while still maintaining consistent care. Research in habit formation shows that once a behavior has been repeated consistently for several months, it becomes significantly more automatic, requiring less willpower to maintain. During summer seasons, your focus shifts from establishing to optimizing. You refine your practices, deepen your understanding, and enjoy the fruits of your labor. This is also when you can expand. Once one area of your mental garden is thriving, you can turn attention to developing another area. The third season is autumn, the time of harvest and preparation. You are actively gathering the results of your mental cultivation. Career advancement, improved relationships, better health, greater peace. Whatever fruits your specific garden has produced, autumn is when they ripen. But autumn also requires preparation for winter. Just as gardeners save seeds, compost plant matter, and protect perennials before cold arrives, you must prepare your mental garden for challenging times. This means reinforcing the thought patterns you have cultivated, documenting the insights you have gained, and building reserves of resilience. Research shows that people who anticipate challenges and prepare strategies for maintaining positive practices during difficult times are far more likely to sustain their growth than those who assume conditions will always be favorable. The fourth season is winter, inevitable periods of difficulty, stress, loss, or simply low energy. These seasons are not failures. They are natural parts of life. You will face setbacks, challenges, grief, and periods when maintaining your mental garden feels impossible. Winter is not the time to expect growth. It is the time to focus on survival and preservation. In nature, perennial plants go dormant in winter, conserving energy below the surface so they can return in spring. Your mental cultivation works similarly. During winter seasons, your goal is not to make dramatic progress, but to maintain your core practices at a minimal level. Protect the gains you have made and trust that this season will pass. Research on resilience shows that people who accept difficult seasons rather than fighting against them, who lower their expectations temporarily rather than abandoning them entirely, and who focus on basic self-care during these times, recover more quickly and completely than those who try to maintain summer-level productivity during winter conditions. The mistake many people make is treating personal development as if life should always be spring or summer. They judge themselves harshly for winter seasons, seeing them as regression rather than natural cycles. This judgment creates additional suffering and can actually prolong the difficult season. When you understand seasonal nature of growth, you can accept winter when it comes, do what is necessary to survive it, and trust that spring will return. Studies in self-compassion show that people who treat themselves kindly during difficult periods show better mental health outcomes than those who practice harsh self-criticism. Sustainable mental gardening requires daily practices that persist through all seasons, though their intensity may vary. Morning routines are particularly powerful. Research shows that behaviors performed early in the day, before the demands and stresses of daily life accumulate, are more likely to be maintained consistently. A simple morning practice might include a few minutes of meditation or breathing exercises to cultivate present moment awareness, journaling about gratitude or intentions to direct attention to what serves your growth, visualization of your goals with emotional engagement to water your desired thoughts, and review of your core values to maintain alignment. During spring and summer, this practice might extend to 30 minutes or an hour. During winter, it might condense to 5 minutes. The key is consistency, not perfection. Evening practices provide bookend support. Before sleep, your brain consolidates the day's experiences into memory. What you focus on in the evening has outsized influence on what your subconscious processes overnight. An evening practice might include review of wins and progress to reinforce positive patterns, identification of challenges and lessons learned to extract wisdom from difficulties, gratitude practice to shift attention to abundance, and planning. Tomorrow's most important priorities to wake with clear direction. Studies on sleep and learning show that people who engage in positive reflection before bed report better sleep quality and wake with better mood than those who ruminate on problems. The practice of regular auditing keeps your mental garden healthy across seasons. Weekly, Take time to assess what is growing well and what needs attention. Monthly, look at bigger patterns and adjust your cultivation strategies. Quarterly, evaluate whether your goals and values still align or need updating. Annually, do a comprehensive review of growth over the year and set intentions for the next cycle. This structured reflection prevents drift, where you gradually stop tending your garden without noticing until it has become overgrown. Research on self-regulation shows that people who regularly monitor their progress toward goals are significantly more likely to achieve them than those who set goals and then do not check in until the deadline. Community and accountability powerfully support sustainable practice. While mental gardening is ultimately personal work, doing it in isolation is harder than necessary. Research consistently shows that people who share their goals with support of others, who have accountability partners, or who participate in communities focused on growth, achieve better outcomes than those who try to change alone. This does not mean you need to share your innermost thoughts with everyone. It means having at least one or two people who know what you are working on, who encourage your growth, and who will gently call you back to your practices when you drift. Online or in-person groups focused on personal development, mindfulness, or specific areas of growth can provide this community. Flexibility is essential for sustainability. Rigid adherence to specific practices without adaptation leads to burnout or abandonment. As your life changes, your practices must evolve. What worked when you were single might not work when you have children. What worked in your 20s might not work in your 50s. This is not failure. This is intelligent adaptation. The principles of thought gardening remain constant: cultivation, watering, pruning, protection, harvesting. But how you implement these principles can and should change based on your circumstances. Research on long-term behavior change shows that people who adapt their strategies to changing conditions sustain new behaviors far better than those who insist on maintaining original methods even when they no longer fit. The role of rest cannot be overstated. Burnout is what happens when you demand constant summer from your mental garden. Your mind needs periods of reduced demand, of not focusing on growth, of simply being. This might be daily rest through adequate sleep, weekly rest through a day with minimal structured obligations, annual rest through vacation that genuinely disconnects you from regular routines. Research on rest and productivity shows that people who take regular breaks at all time scales actually accomplish more over the long term than those who try to maintain constant high effort. This is because rest is when integration happens, when learning consolidates, when creativity emerges, and when motivation replenishes. When you face setbacks, as you inevitably will, the key is not to let them become the end of your practice. One day missed is not failure. One week of struggle is not regression. One season of difficulty is not the loss of all progress. What matters is what you do next. Research on habit maintenance shows that people who view slip-ups as temporary and resume their practice quickly maintain long-term change, while those who view slip-ups as evidence that the practice does not work for them are likely to abandon it entirely. This is why self-compassion is so critical. When you inevitably fall short of your own expectations, respond with kindness and renewed commitment rather than judgment and giving up. The ultimate sustainability practice is making thought gardening your identity rather than an activity. When you see yourself as a person who cultivates their mind, who tends their mental ecosystem, who takes responsibility for their inner landscape, the practices become not things you have to do, but expressions of who you are. Research on identity-based behavior change shows that this shift is powerful. People who adopt new behaviors as part of their identity, rather than as external goals, maintain those behaviors significantly better. Instead of saying, "I am trying to be more positive," you say, "I am someone who cultivates positive thought patterns." Instead of "I should meditate," you say, I am a person who practices mindfulness. This subtle shift in language reflects and reinforces a fundamental change in how you relate to your mental cultivation. Your mental garden is not a project with an endpoint. It is a lifelong practice. Some years will bring abundant harvest. Others will test your resilience. Through it all, the practices remain. Prepare your soil, select your seeds wisely, water with attention and emotion, prune what no longer serves, protect from invaders, harvest with gratitude, and respect the seasons. This is not burden. This is the most meaningful work you can do, because everything in your external life flows from your internal landscape. Tend your garden well through all seasons, and you will live a life of continuous growth, deepening wisdom, and abundant flourishing. Conclusion: your garden awaits. You stand now in a different place than when you began this journey. You understand that your mind is not a chaotic wilderness, but a garden with specific needs, principles, and practices that determine what grows there. You know that thoughts are not random mental noise, but seeds that, when planted and tended, produce real results in your life. You have learned that you are not a passive observer of your mental landscape, but an active gardener with both the power and the responsibility to cultivate it wisely. The principles you have learned are simple but profound. Prepare the soil of your subconscious by examining core beliefs and replacing limiting patterns with empowering ones. Select seeds thoughtfully, choosing thoughts aligned with your values and goals, rather than accepting whatever blows into your awareness. Water consistently with attention and emotion, recognizing that what you focus on and feel strongly about will grow. Prune ruthlessly, removing thoughts and patterns that drain your energy without contributing to growth. Protect vigilantly against external and internal invaders that would compromise your cultivation. Harvest gratefully, acknowledging and celebrating the fruits of your mental work, and sustain through all seasons, adapting your practices to changing conditions while maintaining core commitments. The research and science you have encountered throughout these chapters is not academic abstraction. It represents decades of study into how minds actually work, what promotes genuine well-being, and how lasting change happens. Cognitive behavioral therapy demonstrates that changing thoughts changes emotions and behaviors. Neuroplasticity research proves that your brain physically restructures based on repeated thought patterns. Positive psychology reveals which thought patterns correlate with flourishing versus languishing. Mindfulness studies show that attention can be trained like a muscle. All of this science confirms what expert gardeners have always known. Work with natural principles, and abundance follows. But knowledge alone changes nothing. Gardens do not grow from reading about gardening. They grow from putting hands in soil, planting seeds, pulling weeds, and showing up day after day to tend what has been planted. Your mental garden is the same. Everything you have learned in this book will mean nothing unless you actually implement it. The question now is simple: will you? You might feel overwhelmed, wondering where to start. Start small. Choose one practice from this book that resonates with you. Maybe it is a morning gratitude practice to direct your attention. Maybe it is identifying one limiting belief to challenge. Maybe it is establishing a boundary to protect your mental space. Maybe it is simply beginning to notice your thoughts without judgment. Start there. Master that practice until it becomes natural. Then add another. Research consistently shows that small, consistent changes compound into massive transformation over time. You do not need to overhaul your entire life tomorrow. You need to tend your garden a little bit today, and then again tomorrow, and then again the day after. You will face resistance. Your old thought patterns will not give up territory easily. Limiting beliefs you have held for years will resurface, trying to reassert dominance. External circumstances will test your commitment. There will be days when maintaining your practices feels impossible. This is not failure. This is part of the process. Every gardener faces weeds, pests, and bad weather. What separates thriving gardens from failed ones is not the absence of challenges, but the presence of consistent tending despite challenges. You will also experience doubt. Is this really working? Am I just fooling myself with positive thinking? Shouldn't I just accept reality as it is? These questions are normal, even healthy. They keep you honest and prevent delusion. The answer is that thought gardening is not about denying reality. It is about recognizing that your interpretation of reality shapes your experience of it, and you have the power to choose interpretations that serve your growth rather than limit it. When you choose empowering thoughts, you are not ignoring problems. You are positioning yourself to solve them more effectively. Imagine yourself 1 year from now. If you commit to cultivating your mental garden daily, what might be different? What limiting beliefs might have loosened their grip? What positive patterns might have become automatic? What results might have manifested in your career, relationships, health, or sense of purpose? Research on consistent personal development practice shows that people who maintain simple daily routines focused on mental cultivation report profound life changes within a year, not because of one magical transformation, but because of hundreds of small choices compounding over time. Now imagine 5 years from now, 10 years, 20. A life lived with intention, with conscious cultivation of thoughts that serve rather than sabotage, with regular tending of your mental ecosystem. How different would that life be from one where you continue letting random thoughts dominate, where you never examine limiting beliefs, where you allow your attention to be controlled by whatever is loudest in your environment? The research is clear. People who take control of their mental lives experience dramatically better outcomes than those who remain passive. The choice is entirely yours. No one can force you to tend your mental garden. No one can make you implement these practices. But also, no one else can do this work for you. Your mental ecosystem is yours alone to cultivate or neglect. The question is not whether you have time. Everyone has the same 24 hours. The question is whether you will prioritize the most important gardening you will ever do, the cultivation of a mind that nourishes your growth rather than stunts it. The garden of your mind is waiting. It does not care about your past. It does not judge your previous neglect. It simply responds to what you do today and tomorrow and the day after that. Every moment offers a new opportunity to plant better seeds, water more intentionally, prune more courageously, protect more vigilantly. Every moment offers the chance to become the gardener your mind deserves. You have everything you need to begin. You understand the principles. You know the practices. You have seen the research supporting this approach. Now the only thing required is decision, followed by action. Decide that your mental ecosystem matters enough to cultivate deliberately. Decide that you deserve a mind that supports rather than sabotages your dreams. Decide that you will not spend another year as a passive victim of random thoughts, and then act on that decision. Start today. Start now. Even 5 minutes of intentional mental cultivation is infinitely better than another day of default thinking. Remember, the goal is not perfection. The goal is not to eliminate all negative thoughts or to feel positive every moment. The goal is to create a mental ecosystem where growth is natural, where challenges are navigable, where your thoughts work for you instead of against you. This is entirely achievable. Thousands of people have transformed their lives through these principles. You can too. Your mental garden is not separate from your life. It is the foundation of your life. Everything you experience, create, achieve, and become flows from the thoughts you habitually think and the beliefs you consistently hold. Change your mental garden, and you change everything. This is not hyperbole. This is reality confirmed by research and proven by experience. The seeds you plant today will determine the harvest you reap tomorrow. What will you plant? Will you continue planting seeds of doubt, fear, and limitation? Or will you deliberately plant seeds of possibility, courage, and growth? The choice is yours. The power is yours. The responsibility is yours. And the rewards, when you commit to this practice, are beyond what you currently imagine possible. Your garden awaits. The soil is ready. The seasons are turning. And you, right now, in this moment, hold the seeds of transformation. Plant them, water them, tend them faithfully, and watch as your life blossoms into abundance that once seemed impossible. This is not fantasy. This is the natural outcome of devoted mental cultivation. And it begins now. Your transformation begins now. Welcome to the practice of thought gardening. Welcome to the cultivation of a mental ecosystem that nourishes growth. Welcome to the life that has been waiting for you to step into your role as master gardener of your own mind. Go now, tend your garden, and flourish.